Hello, friends. John Hand with the Pulsing Cinema, and today's movie is a special movie. A movie that your 10 or 12 or 14-year-old self probably rented constantly from Blockbuster. The movie that you lusted after in the pages of Fangoria. The movie that you watched with an utter sense of disappointment in some ways and an utter sense of awe in other ways. An incredible film, Clive Barker's Nightbreed. And this was a film utterly hyped throughout its release. Everybody was calling it the Star Wars of monster movies. That's what Clive Barker promoted the film as. And Clive Barker was a comer. He'd been this author, this horror author who did these incredibly detailed, visceral works of fiction. An incredible, Stephen King was the man. Stephen King was Mr. Horror, and Stephen King, the big quote, "I've seen the future of horror," and it's Clive Barker. So what the hell? I mean, Stephen King was the guy who, did that quote, the most ferociously original film. I've seen the Evil Dead quote, which was plastered on, and he was right about Evil Dead. He's got to be right about Clive Barker, And Clive Barker made these novels, and then Hellraiser. Hellraiser, a low-budget English horror film, came out of nowhere and launched an icon, Pinhead. But Pinhead was like this strange. He was not like a Freddy or a Jason or anything we'd ever seen. This guy was like an interdimensional demon alien thing. Somehow. He might have come from Pluto or the Leather Bar, He's like, he might be Star Wars or it might be William Friedkin's Cruising. I mean, he is just totally, something totally original. And whether it was kids wanting to see the latest horror film or just people recognizing the utter originality of Clive Barker's vision. I mean, the term visionary really, at that point, you could ascribe that to Clive Barker without anyone raising a hair. Because, it's just, my God, those films were incredible. So, and it seemed like the novel and Hellraiser, and then Rawhead Rex was an adaptation. Wasn't very good. Had a good poster. Had a cool name. Clive Barker wrote the screenplay. Whored himself out. Didn't really like the results. But at the same time, it was again getting his name out. And within a few years of that, he had the Hellraiser sequel, which he had his friend write, and they worked on it together. The big thing after that was Nightbreed, and also Nightbreed was kind of like Clive Barker at the end of the 80s was emblematic of where we felt that horror film could go, because the early 80s was the slasher, emblematic of the Friday the 13th films, the Nightmare on Elm Street film. Nightmare on Elm Street was imaginative, but Halloween, in the late 80s kind of, and it was just mediocrity with some bright, shining glimmers of Sam Raimi and the Evil Dead 1 and 2, but otherwise very drab, very dismal, very much on the course that Friday the 13th and Halloween set. Clive Barker was a beacon of light. Clive Barker was, okay, we're in the late 80s, we're coming into the early 90s, we can have imaginative films full of really crazy, special effects, which pushed the limits of special effects technology at that point. Makeup effects, definitely what Bob Keane was doing with Hellraiser, and then what happened in Nightbreed. Pushing the limits of of these special effects marvels. And so Nightbreed went into production. And Nightbreed, early 90s film, what was it, 1990, right? And the results, which it came out poorly marketed as a slasher film by Morgan Creek, by Fox, the results are really still remarkable for what they were. I mean, it's in my mind, I always think there's an alternate reality. There's like an alternate timeline where Nightbreed really became like the Star Wars of horror films, and Clive Barker became a George Lucas. And then throughout the 90s, he started writing these novels which sold by the billions, and he became like a Sutter Kane character where he started influencing people negatively, and they'd read his novels and like start chaining themselves up in their basements and cutting off their tongues and doing this. And so by the late 90s, like the Earth is this Clive Barker dystopian apocalypse, and we have to journey like Lord of the Rings. We have to journey into the castle of Barker and slay the dragon and turn everything right again and start making safe Sean Cunningham Friday the 13th movies again. But that digression aside, that didn't happen. We're on the correct timeline here, and Nightbreed is still it's a film about us and them. It encompasses all of the ideas of that Clive Barker was getting through in his work. The us and them, and the freaks are much like ourselves, and they have their own culture, and this idea of Boone, this outsider, a man who's always felt outside in his world, who journeys to this place, Midian, where the monsters live, and makes almost this fairy tale journey into Canada, where he, which there may very well be monsters in Canada. I'm not sure. Journeys into Canada in order to become part of this city of monsters, which is incredibly well rendered. I mean, the film was a pretty large budget film, but it wasn't that large a budget, and they make it just look like a gigantic film. And then he's chased by this psychopathic doctor played by David Cronenberg. Who else could play a psychopathic doctor, other than David Cronenberg? Perfect timing, perfect. I mean, that was a perfect intersection of time where they could get this incredible guy personality to act in this film, and incredible. And then the confrontation at the end between the Hick townspeople and the inhabitants of Midian with the berserkers, and the wondrous score from Danny Elfman. The role of the sage played by Doug Bradley, and I don't know. It's really the experience of Nightbreed is a kind of a you had to be there experience. I mean, I talked about earlier how this is a film that maybe your younger self or maybe a younger me lusted after and wanted to watch, and was excited about for probably a year before its release, and I think people who were not kind of in their early teens at that era in the late 80s and early 90s, when this film came out, it's just an ordinary film to them. Like when the special edition Blu-ray with the new director's cut came out recently, and it was $80 for the limited edition. A lot of kids, 20-year-old kids who were like born in 1990 were like, oh, this is way too expensive for a Blu-ray. What is this? It's just ordinary movies. And it's like, I want to just reach through my computer screen and slap these people on the cheek, and it's like, dude, you don't understand. This is like the holy grail of cinema. Like a director's cut of Nightbreed is like something that our 10-year-old self could scarcely imagine that could ever happen. Water could turn into wine. We could believe that more so than we could believe a director's cut of Nightbreed would ever be released, would ever surface. But it surfaced, and it now exists, and you can actually go and buy it. You can watch it on Netflix. I mean, that's an incredible journey from the darkness to the light. And the changes are overall really good. It's got a hokey song and dance number, or song number from Boone's girlfriend in the beginning, which is kind of a Katie Lang song. And all right, okay, I'll give it to him. But overall, that doesn't ruin the film. And there's overall, I mean, some really great new elements here, and I think Doug Bradley's voice finally, getting back into the film, he came back in and did the ADR for his performance. That to me was a particularly good element. The ending, which is this kind of storybook ending for a monster movie, is incredible. The new ending, and overall, a great experience. So Nightbreed, great film. You need to watch it, and watch the new director's cut, because that's some great stuff.